I'm Rachel Linden, and I'm the director of GMO Free Arizona. And we're a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating about genetically modified foods, GMOs, and their associated risks. So that covers more than just GMOs. It covers the chemicals they come with. That associated risk is a bit of a broad topic, and I wanted to make sure that you knew there was more to it. And I know you probably do if you're here tonight. We're just finding out how harmful those chemicals are. And we'll be bringing speakers throughout next year that are specialists in that particular field. Just wanted a little side note, okay? So GMO Free Arizona, we're a nonprofit, we educate about GMOs. We host informative movie nights, lectures, and trainings. We support healthy, vibrant, GMO-free food systems. As parents, as health-conscious consumers, as non-GMO farmers, food sovereignty activists, and sustainability advocates. We collaborate with like-minded organizations statewide, and we provide a hub for resources and networking for Arizona's thriving GMO-free movement. Let me tell you a little bit about myself and why I am in this game. I was sick for a very long period of time with many seemingly unconnected things. I had about 10 years of illness that culminated into a moment where I had spent almost 3 months in bed with what felt like asthma, severe fatigue. I had been to doctor to doctor to doctor. I don't think any of those doctors I saw are in this room tonight. I really don't. But if you recognize me, just give me a little high five in the corner later, okay? It took a long time for me to figure out what was going on for me. I had lived most of my life as an athlete. I ran track. I lifted weights. I felt like the epitome of health. I'd given birth to 2 very healthy young ladies, 2 little girls, perfectly healthy, good kids. So what happened in the mix, right? What happened that took me down so quick, that left me in bed for almost 3 months with asthma? I'm on so many prescription drugs, I can't count them. And my littlest daughter, who was a toddler at the time, came to see me in bed and she said, Mommy, it's okay. I'll bring my kids to come and visit you in bed. And I think that was the moment where I had just had enough, where I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. I thought about it for a minute and I thought, my daughter had never known me as a healthy, vibrant, athletic woman. She'd only known me as the sick mommy that couldn't get out of bed. I have lost clients. I have missed camping trips, endless things with my family, appointments. I miss saying goodbye to my grandmother before she died. I don't want that for anyone else. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for your children. I don't want that for your grandchildren. I don't want that as a legacy for what I leave behind on this planet. So at the height of my illness, with my daughter coming in and saying this to me, after seeing doctor after doctor for years, my allergies were so bad, I pulled all the carpet out of my house. I repainted everything. I got rid of my dog. I started to think maybe I was allergic to my husband. That's a spooky thing, right? I liked the guy, I wanted to keep him. Which, by the way, he's not here tonight, he couldn't be, he's on a business trip, but high five for all the hubbies that put up with the mom activists out there, right? Those guys are great. Thanks, honey, wherever you are, thank you. So 10 years of illness, right? Doctor to doctor. No help in all of that. Maybe Band-Aids for symptoms, medications, progesterone. I was on steroids. I had rashes that went from one place to another. I had weird mystery diseases that only old people are supposed to get. In my 30s, in my young 30s, what's going on here, right? I had digestive issues, very bad digestive issues. It took a nutritionist to tell me, without running my blood panel, even asking me more than just a couple questions, like really even just looking at me, the rashes on my neck and everything I had going on. I looked like a white hot mess, okay? And she said, oh, you're probably allergic to wheat and dairy. I laughed at her. I can eat anything. I'm not allergic to anything. I've never had allergies other than seasonal allergies, which were horrendous. Eye, ear, nose, lung, and throat infections that came with it, repetitively, over and over and over again. So she said, no, you better take this seriously, because if you don't, it won't be but a few years before you'll have a bag attached to your hip. And you will have lost all your faculties. And it'll start attacking your brain, and it'll do this, and it'll do that, and it'll do this. It erodes over time if you ignore your food allergies. But I did. I went wheat-free and dairy-free, and I felt relief, but I didn't feel like I was healing. I felt like I was missing something. She alluded to this thing in soy, corn, GMO. She didn't really explain it, but it was just enough for me to get real curious and go down the rabbit hole. I wasn't born broken. I'm not made to be sick. Something happened. What happened to me? So then, and I'm going to tell you, do you know how hard a few years ago you had to look for any information about GMOs? Too hard. I might as well have been looking for, mining for gold, panning for gold, mining for diamonds, right? I couldn't find information, but I got online, and there was one person that popped up. A little half-crazy looking dude named Jeffrey Smith, right? And he explained it, and the way he explained it, I just had this moment, okay, you're all gonna think I'm nuts for saying this, right? But have you ever had a moment where it's like, your body started talking to you from your gut? Like, seriously, my gut was like, whoa, okay, something's going on here. It spoke to me, and I knew it was GMOs at that point. I took the GMOs out of my diet. I'm taking surfing lessons, y'all, okay? I got my body back, I got my health back, super happy. So, here we are tonight, that brings us here tonight. It brings us to this event where we can thank our sponsors. We have some fabulous sponsors. Number one, Jeffrey Smith, the Institute for Responsible Technology. This organization investigates and reports GMOs, their risks, impacts on health, environment, economy, agriculture, as well as problems associated with current research, regulation, corporate practices, and reporting. I want to thank also the Arizona Naturopathic Medical Association. There's some folks in the house, I think. Okay, they're professional. They're the Professional Association for Arizona's Licensed Naturopathic Physicians. I want to thank Plant-Based Nation, an organization that coordinates health conferences. Y'all, hey Jared, give a hand up. There's Plant-Based Nation. ShopOrganic.com, which by the way is an Arizona-based company, totally organic shipping experience online. They've vetted all of their products to be GMO free. I want to say thank you to Asante Organics, which they're tabling here tonight. Asante, are you here in the house? Woohoo, they're right there. Thanks, guys. Those guys are a Phoenix company with all organic, GMO-free shampoos, conditioner, toothpaste, meal replacement shakes, cleansers, and more. I want to say thank you to Save Your Dairy, Jackie Calamos, the only certified raw organic dairy in Arizona. And a special round of applause and thank yous for naturopathic specialists. Deborah Smolinski, their clinics in Scottsdale. They've got 4 naturopathic doctors working on their team. And I'd also like to do a special shout out for our 3 doctors who are also sponsors. Dr. Deborah Dykma of Wellness Center in Northwest Phoenix. Dr. Chris Serafini of Valley Spinal Care Clinic. Dr. Jack Wolfson of Wolfson Integrative Cardiology. Those three doctors, thank you. And without these sponsors tonight could not have happened and would not have happened. These events take up a lot of time, money, energy, and it just takes a village to put one of these on. I also want to thank the rest of the village, which is the volunteers for GMO Free Arizona. Thank you. Thank you guys for all your hard work. Okay, and there, just a side note too, there are no paid staff members. Most of us work day jobs to pay for our night job, okay? And I hope that you'll volunteer and work with us. It's a fun group. We always have great food. And we like to do super events like this. Okay, so think about it. So just so you know, I work behind Prop 37 in California to label GMOs. We brought it home. We're doing a labeling initiative here. And without further ado, I'll bring you the man that's going to be bringing that to us. And that's Jared Keene with Plant-Based Nation.
Hello, thank you all for coming. Like I said, my name is Jared Keene, founder and executive director of Plant-Based Nation. And we're out in the community teaching people the health, environmental, and economic benefits of a plant-based diet. And when I weighed 285 pounds and started my transition, that was the first time I heard about GMOs, and that was 3 years ago. 27 years after GMOs started. And that really got me thinking. The other day I was sitting at a pool party and there were two parents talking about how they don't let their kids watch television or play video games. And I said to myself, gee, I'm a bad parent. My son's been watching Family Guy since he was 9, South Park since he was 10. He's 12 now and he's Halo and Call of Duty. And I'm like, man. And then I went home and I moved his video games and I saw the M on his video game for mature. And I went, oh, well, we thought it was a good idea to label video games now, didn't we? We thought that parents needed to be able to make informed decisions knowing what the content of that video game by putting a label on it. Not really a far stretch that we need the same thing for our food. When I look back at my son, and I think that we had to feed him formula, and I didn't know, and all the food that I've been feeding him, and I didn't know, I had a right to know, so I could make an informed decision. It was my job as a parent to be informed, but the information wasn't, I don't know, on the side of the package. How would I know? How would anybody know? When people ask me when I do my education programs, what's a GMO? And I answer, and they go, well, what are GMOs in? Well, I can run down the list of what GMO products are, but each day I learn something new that a GMO is in. I didn't know there were GMOs in tea bags. How would I know that? Why would I know that? I'm buying tea. This is why labeling is important. Banning is even better, but labeling starts to the banning. And here in Arizona, we are going to pass labeling. Every place around the state that I go, I meet conservatives, Democrats, Tea Party members, Occupy, Christian, Jewish people, Mexican Americans, and every time I explain to what a GMO is, they're like, well, how come I don't know what's in my food? And the people that do know want to know. There's 100 rabid volunteers sitting in Verde Valley right now, waiting for me to open the cage door to this. We're going to get this done. We're going to do it as volunteers because we care, and we're going to accomplish this. And we are not afraid of the money. I flat do not care how much money they put into this state. Because we're going to do it door to door, neighbor to neighbor. You're going to look them right in the eye, and people are going to tell them, this is what a GMO is, and this is what it's doing to you and your kids. This is your chance. When I first started with the GLBT movement with marriage equality, I came to that late. But I watched and learned from their processes, and we are in the same process. We are reaching that tipping point. And all the blue states in the world can go vote for labeling, but once a red state votes for labeling, you're going to get some real attention to what's going on out there. And I appreciate your warm applause. But what I need is there's a volunteer sign-up sheet in the back. Don't sit and watch us pass by. 20, 30 years from now, when your grandkids, your kids, what were you doing when we took down Monsanto? Well, I was too busy. They just started Game of Thrones on HBO, and I couldn't miss it. Look at your kids and find the time, an hour a week to collect signatures, to go talk to somebody, to host a potluck in your neighborhood, to get one of us to come and do an education program. This is your time, this is our time to take back our food. We will starve the beast and feed the people by the time this is all over with. Thank you all so much for your time. I'm back there next to the corn pictures. Afterwards, come and talk to me, sign up on the list. We'll be getting this thing rolling, signature collection, by the end of November, December. This is your time to make a statement in the process. Keep the pressure on DC, keep the pressure on the companies, starve the beast, feed the people. Thank you so much.
Hey guys. Jared is going to need some help. He's going to need volunteers. And I love the idea that he thinks he doesn't need money. And I know he's not afraid of it, but afraid of it, I welcome it. So he's going to be passing the hat tonight. This is a good time to be generous. Please be generous now. Now is where your money's going to make the most difference. Okay? Getting him started is going to mean everything. We need a little spark, guys. A little spark to start a flame, to start a fire. And I'll tell you, I was in California. Nothing gets the conversation going, gets the media involved, gets the people talking, gets the papers writing like a labeling campaign. I watched it unfold like crazy. And I thought, we can do that in Arizona. And I'll tell you, he needs our money from here because I don't think there are national organizations. I know there aren't. They've already turned us down, okay? Quite a few of them. And I don't want to bum you out. They may come to the table once we've got the wheel spinning, but right now they're saying, no, we're not throwing money into Arizona. Arizona's going to have to start it up on its own, okay? And I don't know if that will ever change anywhere along that stretch. I hope it does. So tonight's a great time to be generous. Now, if you can sit back for a moment, we are going to enjoy just a few minutes of Jeffrey Smith's latest movie, Genetic Roulette. It is an hour-and-a-half long documentary. You're going to see a few minutes of it, and we're selling copies today back at the GMO Free Arizona table. You guys want to wave around your hands at the GMO Free Arizona table in the middle? They're busy. They're busy. There they are. And $20 cash gets you a copy that you can take home. So let me go ahead and pop that DVD in, and if somebody wants to grab the lights for us, that would be super.
It's the most dangerous thing facing human beings in our generation.
GMO, genetically modified organisms. They take genes from one species and force it into the DNA of other species.
We have hundreds of millions of acres of genetically modified crops that have been planted in the United States, and yet most people are not aware.
I found out that our food supply is genetically modified. And guess what? The food that my son ate on August 25th, 2009 was raw corn. The corn that almost killed him.
The process of insertion plus cloning creates massive collateral damage. There can be hundreds or thousands of mutations up and down the DNA,
Things we're seeing today aren't normal.
Illnesses that weren't epidemic before are now epidemic.
We have gone from food in its whole food form to food undergoing a scientific experiment.
The havoc that it will cause will be across the entire spectrum of disease.
What the problem was is I guess he said that they weren't able to process the food correctly and they would bloat up and die from it.
They can put it on the market without telling the FDA or to consumers.
It became clear that the FDA had been lying repeatedly since 1992.
It's not just an agriculture issue, it's not just a food industry issue, it's an ever-living creature issue.
And if we don't do anything within a decade, every single major crop with any significant market size is going to be genetically modified, and we're not going to know it.
The world can get rid of it. The world should get rid of it. The sooner, the better. Now.
We look at what they're eating, and we take out the genetically modified foods and the industry foods, and they all get better. It never doesn't work.
I don't want to be a human lab rat, and I certainly don't want my 2-year-old daughter to be a human lab rat.
It's not about feeding the world. It's not about the blind will see and the lame shall walk. It's about chemical companies selling chemicals.
What have I done to my children, and what has been done to them without my consent?
I'd like to tell you a little bit about the man that's going to be speaking tonight, and if we could get the lights, that would be great. So I'm introducing Jeffrey Smith. He is the director for the Institute for Responsible Technology. He's the author of the book Seeds of Deception and Genetic Roulette, and the filmmaker behind the movie Genetic Roulette. He's also done more to keep GMOs out of the mouths of people that care about their health than anyone else. He was very gracious to agree to come here tonight. He travels around the world. He consults to governments. He is an internationally accepted expert and speaker. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Jeffrey Smith.
Phoenix continues to amaze me. Where'd you all come from? My goodness. You guys are amazing. You just keep coming out for GMO stuff. Maybe you will be the first to pass a ballot initiative on that. Actually, I just came from Washington State. They want to be the first, and they have a very good possibility of being the first. We're further ahead in Washington State at this point than we were in California. And California, we lost 51 to 49. So the other side just dumped another $5 million, so they've got $17 million of disinformation. I mean, it is so blatant, the lies. They send out these very large kind of poster-sized flyers, and they say, you know, horrible exemptions to the rule. They say the chicken pot pie will be labeled, but the chicken won't, right? Now you'd think, okay, the chicken in the chicken pot pie will be labeled, but the chicken alone won't. Similarly, pet food made with beef will be labeled, but beef alone won't. Now they're lying, because the beef alone in the can will not be labeled. It's only labeled because there's soy and corn in there as well. And the chicken in the chicken pot pie is not what's going to be labeled, it's the soy and corn in the chicken pot pie. And they know that, and they're purposely misleading. In fact, pet food is exempt in Washington, so the whole thing is a lie. They say it's going to increase the cost of the groceries by $450 a year for a company to put a label on the cost of the ink. They change their labels all the time. I bring this up because I want you to know that the other side is lying. Consistently. In fact, the entire deck of cards is based on a foundation of lies. There's almost nothing true. We finally figured out when these guys are lying. It's when their lips are moving, yeah. Someone turned that on by itself. Monsanto's everywhere. How many people here are farmers? Raise your hand. Let's give a hand to the farmers. You guys should be protected by the Endangered Species Act. How many people garden? Raise your hand. Yes. How many people eat? Now wait a minute, there are more gardeners here. Okay, I want you to, I check in on Phoenix from time to time, and I ask this question a lot. How many people, first of all, have ever seen me speak? Raise your hand. Oh, I gotta change my jokes at some point. But not tonight. All right, rate yourself from 1 to 100 how vigilant you've been at avoiding eating genetically engineered foods. Okay, so 1 means, what's a GMO? Okay, 100 means extremely vigilant. All right? So most Americans are in the lowest vigilant category. So 1 to 20. How many are 1 to 20? Raise your hand. That's eating out, it's buying foods, everything. Keep your hand up, look around. I want everyone to see the numbers to start. Okay? 20 to 40, raise your hand. 40 to 60, raise your hand. 60 to 80, raise your hand. 80 to 100, raise your hand. Now raise your hand if you don't like raising your hand. Okay, I see you. All right, now I want to, one other question. How active have you been talking about GMOs or prescribing it to patients? Low active, 1 to 20, raise your hand. Really, that's all? Come on. Thank you. 20 to 40. 40 to 60. 60 to 80. 80 to 100. That's the pretest. We're going to see how you feel about eating and talking about GMOs in about 45 minutes. I'll mark it. So a bunch of you are really conscientiously avoiding eating. And I want to ask you something. So if you're pretty conscientious, let's say 60 to 100, or whatever you consider conscientious, I want you to raise your hand if, when you switched to non-GMO foods, you felt an improvement in your health in any way. Raise your hand. Look around. Keep your hands up. Look around. That's very significant. Okay. Yes, every time I raise my hand now my arm hurts. That's what happened when I cried. So I want to ask you specifically which symptoms. Okay? I'm going to call on you. Raise your hand if you want to share a symptom. Either you or your patient or your dog or your pet or your horse. Yes?
My stomach.
Stomach.
I was on 3 different stomach medications and now I'm on them.
Stomach. So is that, congratulations. So
My immune system. I have a blood disorder and I was sick. I caught everything. I was always sick. I am no longer sick.
wow. So did you hear in the back? Let me repeat for the camera. Stomach, 3 stomach medications and an immune system problem, a disorder, getting sick all the time, not sick anymore. This is outstanding. Now, you mentioned 2 things. Stomach, which I'm going to expand into the intestines and the big, the whole bowel, the whole thing. Digestive problems. Raise your hand if you noticed any digestive problems got better. Raise your hand. All right, we're going to start there. Because that's the most popular around the country. Because I've asked people in about 80 lectures this question, and there's never been a lecture where there hasn't been at least one, or usually many people that have got better from digestive disorders when they switched to non-GMO diets. So there's some competing reasons why that might be the case. I'm going to start with Bt toxin. How many people have never heard of Bt toxin? Raise your hand. Oh, good. We have some new ones in the audience. Just when you thought it was safe to eat. As long as you're not eating dinner while I'm giving a talk. I hate giving dinner talks unless I vetted the food first. Trust me, it's like, are you sure you want to eat that corn chip? And wash it down with Diet Coke, with aspartame? Are you sure? Do you know that who the CEO of the aspartame company was? Donald Rumsfeld. That's the only reason why I got approved. I'll tell you that story later. All right, so corn, engineered to produce a toxic insecticide that breaks open little holes in the stomach walls of insects to kill them. All right? It's called BT corn, named after a bacterium called Bacillus thuringiensis. It naturally produces an insecticide, and so they naturally take out the gene that produces the insecticide, and they naturally make millions of copies, and they naturally attach a viral gene, and we've lost the natural a long time ago. And then they put it into a gun, and they shoot that gun into a plate of millions of corn cells. Then they clone those cells into a plant, and now every single cell of every single corn plant has a gene-sized spray bottle that breaks open the stomach of insects to kill them. Now, BT from soil bacteria is a natural insecticide. How many people here have used BT? Raise your hand. Okay, I see about 4 or 5 hands. And what did you read the bottle? Did it say also used as a mouthwash? And an appetizer? No. It says do not take internally. But if you eat corn, you're out of luck because you've just taken it internally. But the Environmental Protection Agency, the enforcement wing of Monsanto says, don't worry. Don't worry, because we assume it's safe. And they assume it's safe because it has a history of safe use in agriculture, but no. It's caused immune reactions in humans and mammals. It's caused tissue damage in mice. But let me just cut to the chase. I want to talk more about BT later. I just want to talk about the gastrointestinal disorders. February last year, Journal of Applied Toxicology came out with a study. Guess what? BT toxin pokes holes in human cells, just like in insects. They promised it wouldn't happen. It happened. So it pokes holes in human cells. Now, if we've got a hole-poking toxin in our corn supply, could that be creating gastrointestinal disorders? I think so. Now, the EPA would say, oh, don't worry, that was done in a test tube. The BT will be completely broken down by the time it gets to the intestines. It'll be destroyed in the stomach. Kid. Well, in Canada, in 2011, a study showed that 93% of the pregnant women tested had BT toxin in their blood. How did it get in the blood? Possibly through the same holes that it poked in the walls of the intestines. It was also in 80% of the unborn fetuses. Another study found that the BT toxin in the blood damaged the red blood cells. If it gets into the fetus doesn't have a blood-brain barrier well developed. It might poke holes in the brain cells. But let's just talk about gastrointestinal. I keep getting ahead of myself because I'm so excited about these poisons. So the BT toxin, if it's poking holes in human cells, that's a problem. When they took the BT direct and also as a part of a BT potato, an experiment, and fed it to mice, it damaged the microvilli, which are those fingers coming off the intestinal walls that do the absorption of food. It cut some of them off. It shortened some. Now, how much BT toxin are we eating? Well, in Canada, they were wondering how come 93% of the women had BT toxin in their blood. It should wash out very quickly. And it's not Mexico where they eat corn tortillas every day. But they do eat milk and meat every day, and the milk and meat come from animals that eat the BT toxin every day in the form of BT corn. So the authors speculated that it was actually from the milk and meat eaten every day, which is why it had such a high level of BT toxin. But I think a more plausible explanation can be traced back to a study that was published in 2004. Let me give you the backstory. So, first of all, Monsanto scientists found bacteria growing in a chemical waste dump near their factory, surviving in the presence of Roundup herbicide, which normally kills bacteria. So they figured, great, let's put it in the food supply. So they took the gene, they produced the protein that allowed the bacteria to survive Roundup, and put it into soybeans and called the soybeans Roundup Ready. So you can spray Roundup on a soybean field of genetically engineered soy, killing all of the other plant biodiversity, but not the Roundup Ready soybeans. So Monsanto sells the soybeans, Monsanto sells the Roundup. Now, as part of the process of insertion, when you insert genes into a plate of cells, you don't know which cell got the gene. You have millions of cells there. You don't want to grow out 1 million plants. You want to grow out just those that got the gene inside it. So they put a selection mechanism. They had to select for those that were successful. So they put an antibiotic-resistant marker gene, or they did for most of the GMOs, which means you then spray the plate of cells with an antibiotic, and it kills them all, except the very few that have the gene functioning in the DNA of the corn plant, of the corn cell. And it's functioning, you know it's functioning because the antibiotic-resistant marker gene is now functioning. So then you clone that into a plant, and not only do you have a little spray bottle in every cell, you have an antibiotic-resistant marker gene. Meaning that every cell of every plant on millions of acres has a gene that resists death by antibiotics. The FDA had regularly complained about GMOs, saying that they could create allergies, toxins, new diseases, and nutritional problems. They were completely ignored by their superiors. So it was approved. Michael Taylor, Monsanto's former attorney, was in charge of policy at the FDA. He ignored the scientists, allowed GMOs on the market without any safety studies. Then he went to work for Monsanto again as their chief lobbyist. Now he's back at the FDA as the US food safety czar. You didn't know that, huh? Anyway, after they started looking at the very first genetically modified crop, the Flavor Saver tomato, and it had an antibiotic-resistant marker gene. And the Division of Anti-Infective Drugs said, whoa, this quote, all capital letters, this would be a serious health hazard. Can you guess why? Antibiotic-resistant genes. Bacteria pass back and forth genes all the time. What if bacteria picked up the antibiotic-resistant marker gene and it mated or transferred it to pathogenic bacteria, to infectious diseases? Now you can't kill those infectious diseases with antibiotics. So they were like, antibiotic-resistant diseases are so dangerous. They cause amputations. You can't kill it, so you have to cut off the leg. You have to cut off the arm. It causes death. Very serious. And they were freaking out. You can read the notes on our website. They were secret notes, but they became public from a lawsuit, and we put it up so everyone can read, which we do. So they decided, okay, if you're going to use it, please monitor to see if gene transfer can happen. But they said, don't worry. The biotech industry said, don't worry. The genes are destroyed in the stomach during digestion. Have we heard that before? Yeah. So they finally tested it. It was a brilliant study. They took 7 human volunteers. And these volunteers had elostomy bags. They had their lower intestines removed. Not for the study, no. It was before, no. But it's for science. No. All right, so they gave them a soy burger and a soy milkshake from genetically modified soy, looked in the elostomy bag, and whoa, what a surprise. So much intact genetically modified DNA had survived passage through the stomach and small intestines, exactly the opposite of what we'd been promised. So it can survive. But in 3 of the 7 volunteers, before they were fed the meal, inside the DNA of their gut bacteria was the gene that Monsanto had found in a chemical waste dump near their factory. In other words, from some previous meal or meals, the genes jumped and ended up in the gut bacteria. and the gut bacteria was unkillable with Roundup, suggesting that it was functioning even after it transferred, suggesting that the antibiotic-resistant marker genes may function even after transferring. Meaning that long after we stop eating genetically modified foods, we may have these genetically modified proteins produced continuously inside our digestive tract. Now let's go back to Canada. 93% of the pregnant women tested had Bt toxin in their blood. Where did they get the toxin? Was it from the milk and meat, or were they producing it inside their own intestines? Normally, plant genes don't transfer to gut bacteria. They're different. They have a different sequence. And similarity of sequence is one of the requirements for transfer. But the genes inserted into corn and to soybeans come from bacteria. So they're similar. If a plant gene transfers to gut bacteria, it won't turn on. The promoter, the on switch, doesn't work in bacteria. But in GMOs, they put a promoter from a virus that does. There's also some other aspects of genes in plants that wouldn't work in bacteria, but those aspects are not present in GMOs. In other words, all of the natural barriers that prevent food from transferring into the DNA of gut bacteria and functioning have been dismantled with GMOs. So we may be colonizing the gut bacteria. So this means that the Bt toxin, which can poke holes in human cells, may be responsible for a lot of problems if it's there being produced continuously, like the inflammatory bowel, the IBS, chronic constipation, peritonitis, ulcerative colitis, all the itises. So that's gastrointestinal disorders. But that's only from the corn. The Roundup is an antibiotic. We just said that. It kills bacteria, right? And we're eating food with Roundup. And what does it kill? Gut bacteria. But it's selective. It kills the beneficial ones. The bifidobacteria, which suppresses inflammation. Not anymore. It's gone. The lactobacillus, which we spend all that money on replacing. Not anymore. It does not kill the salmonella, the E. coli, and the botulism. So when we kill off the positive gut bacteria, we can create an overgrowth of the negative stuff, and that can mess up digestion. Bacteria inside of us helps with the digestion and the immune system. But we're just talking about digestion, remember? It can create zonulin, the gut bacteria, the overgrowth. Zonulin can then pull apart the gaps between the cells in the intestinal walls, causing leaky gut. When glyphosate was fed to carnivorous fish, it damaged the microvilli. When Roundup Ready soybeans were fed to mice, it suppressed the digestive enzymes. So the enzymes weren't there in high enough numbers as they were before. When Roundup Ready soybeans were tested by Monsanto and they tried to hide the evidence, there was as much as 7 times the amount of a known allergen, trypsin inhibitor, which inhibits trypsin, which is a digestive enzyme. When the gases are produced from the gut bacteria overgrowth, it damages the walls of the cells, of the intestines. They produce less, something called CCK, that tells the pancreas to send digestive enzymes. If there's less produced in the intestine, there's less enzymes. So you have digestive problems from every angle. You have holes in your gut, gut bacterial overgrowth, damage to the microvilli, and suppressed digestive enzymes. And your gut bacteria may have genes in it from genetically modified crops. So no wonder we have so many people with gastrointestinal problems that get better. What's the next symptom? That was one. That was the first symptom. What's another symptom, people? Yeah.
Less muscle inflammation.
Muscle inflammation. Whew. Anyone else? Muscle inflammation or fibromyalgia, muscle pain? Okay. Inflammation. Inflammation can come from as an immune system response. Now, what happens when you have holes in the walls of your cells? Anyone, by the way, reduction in allergies? Lots of hands. Autoimmune disease of any type? How about gluten-related disorders? Gone down? Yes, that's nice to see those hands. So these are all either inflammatory or immune or autoimmune. And they can be related to two things we've already discussed. First of all, you end up creating an immune load by having so much allergens coming into the system. If you're producing Bt toxin, and Bt toxin can provoke allergic responses, you may constantly be triggered. The Roundup Ready protein has properties of a dust mite allergen. So if you're allergic to dust, you might be allergic to Roundup Ready soy, and that would be produced continuously inside of you if it transfers and functions. If you have more trypsin inhibitor, that's a known allergen, and Monsanto's soy has as much as 7 times. The corn, Monsanto's BT corn, the process of genetic engineering messed up the genes so much in the DNA of the corn, a silent gene switched on, it produces an allergen that's never found in corn before, called gamazine. But then another aspect, when they fed Bt toxin to mice, they were not only reactive to the toxin, they became reactive to other formerly harmless compounds. So you're not just reacting more and more to corn, you may be reacting to many things. Now, you have holes in your gut, and undigested food particles go through those holes into the bloodstream, and the immune system attacks, creating an inflammatory response. And when it attacks those large food proteins, it sort of does a mugshot on the molecular level, saying to the rest of the system, attack anything that looks like that. But there's something called molecular mimicry, where it attacks that, but it attacks other things that look like that, like the thyroid, if it's gluten, like the microvilli, like the pancreas, like arthritis, like all these different things which are autoimmune diseases and inflammation. So this whole process of drilling holes in our gut walls or separating the cells, which we talked about from Bt toxin and Roundup, could create all sorts of inflammatory problems, autoimmune system problems, autoimmune diseases, food allergies, and this gut bacterial overgrowth and holes in the intestines are linked to autism, also Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and cancer. What's another symptom? Yeah. Energy. I know what you mean. How many people noticed a reduction in fatigue or more energy when they switched to non-GMO diet? Look around at the hands. I knew we were going to get a lot of hands because I always get this. Always. Energy. Always. And there was a paper I actually was reading that showed how glyphosate can attack the mitochondria, which is the energy booster. Glyphosate, of course, is Roundup. There's a lot of reasons why fatigue may be associated with GMOs. Too many it's above my pay grade. Next symptom. Next, someone over here. Symptom, yes.
Not only a wellness in the digestive area, but not getting sick at all anymore. No colds, no flu, no cold sores.
Fantastic. So the immune system is perked up and preventing all sorts of problems. We see that a lot, and I'm going to just describe it also in livestock in a few minutes. Okay? Yes?
I just have endometriosis, and it's uncurable, but I don't have it anymore.
The incurable endometriosis disappeared. Congratulations. Let's get a hand to that. Okay. So I've had a bunch of people say that their diabetes went away. Anyone else diabetes gone away? We got people right here. Incurable. Congratulations. All right. Congratulations. Fantastic. Another one of the incurables. Weight gain. How many people noticed that they could lose weight when they switched to non-GMO? Yes. Look around. Look around. That is very common. Very common. Spoke to someone 3 nights ago in Washington. She lost 35 or 45 pounds in the first year. Her husband lost 15 to 20. Her kids lost 5 each. And the only thing she did was avoid GMOs. Nothing else. I went to a doctor's office. She had told me that she'd been prescribing non-GMO diets to 5,000 patients, and everyone's getting better. I went, what? I was skeptical. I said, give me a percentage. She goes, 100%. I said, let me come to your clinic and talk to your patients. So I talked to someone 25 days into a non-GMO diet. She had lost 10 pounds. Her Crohn's disease disappeared after 3 days. Her skin condition was clearing up and her brain fog was leaving. Anyone brain fog? Brain fog? Okay. What were we talking about? I had someone yell out for symptoms, erectile dysfunction. So I said, okay, raise your hand if you have erectile dysfunction. Anyone? Okay, next symptom. Yes? Psoriasis, skin problems, raise your hand. Very common. You know, I didn't know that before I started asking people. I started asking audiences last year. And skin problems and fatigue, they came up a lot. Brain fog came up a lot. And skin can be related to immune system and inflammation and detoxifying. What's another one? Yeah. Huh? Acid reflux, again, a digestive. Anyone acid reflux in particular? Yes, I get that, I hear that a lot. All right, and we're getting close to the end. I mean, I know what you're going to say because I've done this with 80 different audiences, yeah? Diminished fluid retention. I did not expect that. Gold star. Thank you. Okay, so there's some physiological factors that go way beyond me. Some of the doctors on the table may be able to tell you. And I'm going to talk now about why we think GMOs are related to this. Now, before I do, let's just do a little tour. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine evaluated the animal feeding studies on GMOs by 2009 and said there were all sorts of things that were wrong with the animals. You've heard some of them tonight. Gastrointestinal problems, immune problems. By the way, anyone have reproductive disorders or infertility that got better? Raise your hand. I've heard that before. It happens, it's easier to check in animals. They had liver and kidney damage and other organ damage. They had accelerated aging, problems with insulin and cholesterol. They said all doctors should prescribe non-GMO diets to all patients. So these are some of the reported improvements or conditions that have gotten better in audiences that I've interviewed and people in doctors' offices and people reporting to the doctors who are reporting to us. Irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, infertility, weight loss, erectile dysfunction, ulcers, diabetes, high blood pressure, fatigue, anxiety, depression. Anxiety, depression are mental disorders, anyone? Okay, there's about 6. And then there's those that didn't want to raise their hand. There's gut pain, allergies, asthma, migraines, acid reflux, there you go, autism, colds and flu, you heard that in the back, rashes, we heard that, kidney disease, anyone from kidney? Kidney, yes. The last time I was in Arizona, 2 people in the same lecture. One person's husband was close to getting dialysis, switched to all organic, and we resolved the situation. Two aisles away, someone had 3 kidney transplants and got better when she switched to a non-GMO diet. Brain fog, violent behavior, arthritis, violent behavior. 6.5-year-old, violent, out of control, wanted to be kicked out of school. The mother saw the movie Genetic Roulette. She told me in the audience of an MIT lecture. Within a month, all the symptoms disappeared. All the symptoms disappeared. Arthritis, anyone arthritis? Yeah. Attention span, memory loss, gluten sensitivity. So now when we talk to veterinarians and farmers, we get the similar thing. Death rate, infectious disease, weight, birth defects for infertility, miscarriages, milk production, behavior, litter size, that doesn't translate well. Diarrhea, skin disorders, gut bacterial imbalance. Now when vets or farmers take animals off of GM soy and GM corn and switch them to non-GM soy or corn, there's no cofactors. I mean, many of you, when they got rid of GMOs, you switched to organic, right? You got rid of processed foods, maybe. Some of you got rid of gluten and dairy at the same time. Maybe you became a raw foodist. Maybe you changed everything. And who's to say it's the non-GMO diet that caused the problem? But here are two slides, this one and previously, where we see the same disorders without the cofactors. In livestock, where the only thing changed was the GMO to non-GMO, and in the lab animals, where it's very controlled under same conditions, and the only change is GM versus non-GM at the same time. So this gives us great confidence that it's the GMO causing problems, because we see the repeating patterns, not only lab animals and humans and pets and livestock, but also disease rates in the United States. So I'm going to stand down here, and if this guy back here is not safe, I'm going to, careful, I'm going to hang him. Okay. So this is deaths from senile dementia. See, this is the line of the use of Roundup or glyphosate in the United States jumping up. And this is the deaths from senile dementia shooting up over here in the United States. Deaths from Parkinson's. This is the trend line before glyphosate and GMOs introduced. Glyphosate here, GMOs there, shoots right up. Deaths from Parkinson's. This is new cases of diabetes. There's the trend line. Right? Without the trend line, it looks like this. It goes shooting up with the introduction of Roundup and GMOs. This is acute kidney injury, hospitalizations. This is kidney disease death rates. Notice the trend line here shoots up. End-stage renal disease, kidney and renal pelvis cancer, thyroid cancer incidence. See the trend line, and then it shoots up. Liver and bile duct cancer, again, trend line shooting up. Now you notice these are the cancers that are on the rise, and these are the ones that target tissues for Roundup or glyphosate, including liver, kidneys, and thyroid, which we've already mentioned. This is death, this is hepatitis C diagnoses. We saw liver problems in animals, kidney problems in animals, and we're seeing this in the rise in the US population. High blood pressure. Anyone reduce high blood pressure when they got off of GMOs? I see about 8 hands. Okay, autism. This is a trend line, so this is after the trend line was removed, shooting up. This is low birth weight babies over here. This is inflammatory bowel disease shooting up. This is irritable bowel shooting up. This is chronic constipation. Intestinal infection death rate. Peritonitis. Obesity. Rheumatoid arthritis. Let's talk about obesity for a second. Roundup chelates nutrients, making them unavailable. So you spray it on the ground, and the plants are unable to take up adequate amounts of practically all the minerals. Zinc, manganese, magnesium, selenium, cobalt, etc. Each one of those is like a key in the lock that opens a door to a metabolic pathway. So without those, you can't do a lot of things. So the plants are really sick and really diseased, well, actually they're sick and weak, but then in comes the diseases from the soil and kills the plants. That's how Roundup works. It creates weak, sick plants, it increases the diseases in the soil, they overrun the plants. We eat the weak and sick plants, we eat the Roundup, it chelates the nutrients inside us, and we don't get nutrient activation either. We eat the animals that eat the Roundup, and they're also nutrient deficient on a universal basis in the United States, according to veterinarians who test for nutrient placement in organs from dead animals. So we're eating weak and sick plants, weak and sick animals, and high doses of Roundup. So we're not getting nutrients sufficient to handle functioning, probably. So we may be remaining hungry for those nutrients. At the same time, Roundup not only kills gut bacteria that's good, it also blocks the production of tryptophan by the gut bacteria. It blocks the metabolic pathway. It chelates out certain nutrients from the bacteria, so they can't produce tryptophan. Tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin. Serotonin does a lot, including tell the body, okay, I've had enough, I'm full. So you're not getting the signal that you're full and you're eating more empty calories. So that may be a way that Roundup promotes obesity. Rheumatoid arthritis, celiac disease. Now this is celiac disease in one hospital, in a children's hospital, going up along with the introduction of canola, which is largely Roundup ready. And this is a farm area, so they're spraying the Roundup at higher levels. Now let's come back on stage. I wanted to just show you. Good job. Thank you. So I wanted to just show you these patterns. Lab animals, humans, livestock, pets, which we didn't talk about, and disease rates in the United States. And I started to describe the characteristics of Bt toxin and Roundup to explain these disorders. Because if you look just at the chemical and biochemical and action aspects of these toxins, you could predict these same diseases. Poking holes in human cells, blocking serotonin. You block serotonin, that can cause mood disorders. It structures the pineal gland to produce melatonin, which is necessary for sleep. Anyone feel like they overcame sleep disorders when they switched to a non-GMO diet? Could have been your melatonin. Now, if you're still eating non-organic food, they spray Roundup on all the grains as a ripening agent. The Roundup gets stored in the food portion which we eat. They spray it on fruits and vegetables now. So I strongly recommend, if you can, to buy organic, to not only eliminate the GMOs, but also the Roundup, which is now used on citrus and sweet potatoes and berries and wheat, etc. Now, we look at something like gluten-related disorders, and I just published a 24-page paper at glutenandgmos.com. We haven't even announced it on our list because it's so new. And we talk about 5 or 6 characteristics that occur with Bt and Roundup. The promotion of immune system responses or damaged immune system, the suppressed digestion because of the microvilli and the suppressed digestive enzymes, the holes in the gut, and the overgrowth of gut bacteria. All of those are related to gluten-related disorders. How many people have seen the word gluten-free anywhere? How many people have seen it everywhere? Yeah, and it's everywhere because it's on the rise like crazy. I was talking about gluten-related disorders like 5 days ago, and someone, this was in Bellingham, Washington. Someone said, my friend had sensitivity to gluten, switched to a non-GMO diet, and her sensitivity went away. A doctor said, when someone is gluten sensitive, we take the gluten out, but we also take the GMOs out because the recovery is faster and more complete. So GMOs may be related to that as well. Let's take a look at what can go wrong with GMOs. First of all, I mentioned briefly, and I mentioned it very quickly, that the process of genetic engineering messed up the corn DNA so much that a gene switched on that's normally silent. This happens all the time. Genes can overproduce or underproduce as a result just of the process of genetic engineering. So you can put in a vitamin A for rice to make children happy and not go blind, but kill them by the changes that occur in the DNA. That's why you have as much as a 7-fold increase in a known allergen in soy. Why you have lignin, which is increased in soy, the metabolic pathway that produces lignin produces rotenone, which is linked to Parkinson's. So eating GM soy might increase your risk of Parkinson's. So all these things can change as a result of the process of genetic engineering, irrespective of what gene you can put in. And here's a perfect example. Potatoes, fed to rats caused potentially precancerous cell growth, smaller brains, livers, and testicles, partial atrophy of the liver, and damaged immune system in 10 days. The intestinal lining was completely different, and look at the stomach lining. Now, the rats that had the long stomach lining ate genetically engineered potatoes engineered to produce an insecticide. But one of the control groups ate non-GM potatoes, and the meal was spiked with the insecticide. So you have the GM potato producing an insecticide, and you have a non-GM potato spiked with an insecticide. The insecticide did not cause the problem because they did not have the overgrowth of the cell walls. It was not what was being produced by the gene that was inserted. It was the mess up. Up to 4% of the DNA can be scrambled or mutated or changed when you do this transformation process. Hundreds of genes can change their levels of expression. So I want to show you some pictures for the visual learner. We don't need to see this. This is just immune system responses. These are the skin of farm workers in India who touch BT cotton, who work in the fields. They're getting rashes and itching. And investigations verified it was the BT cotton. Thousands of sheep died after eating the BT cotton plants after harvest. One study found a 100% death rate in those that ate the BT and 0 symptoms in those that ate the natural plant. I went to one town in India. They allowed their buffalo to graze on BT cotton plants for 1 day. All 13 buffalo died within 3 days. They also lost 26 goats and sheep. I said, how many of you felt itching or rashes when working in the field? Most raised their hand. Is the cotton in Arizona BT? Could be. Yes. Yes. And they harvest by machine. If they harvest it by hand, it may be different. I have heard that there are some kids that play in the cotton fields in the southeast and are suffering from mysterious maladies and sometimes death. And I have no idea if it's GMO related. So, I want to share with you, let me see, some more visuals. Here we go. This is disgusting photos, which I added tonight for your enjoyment. The botulism doesn't get killed by the Roundup, but the controlling bacteria that controls the botulism and keeps it in check does. So we have this botulism explosion in cattle. You know, sudden infant death syndrome in children, they found it related to botulism in some cases. Now, when you look at the metabolic pathways of what's happening to the lens. Oh, you want to see the disgusting photos, don't you? Nah. They're too disgusting. Just leave the lights on. So when you look at just the metabolic pathways that are shut down by glyphosate and the other aspects to it, these two scientists did a study, did a paper about 50 pages, linking it to heart disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity, autism, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, anorexia nervosa, muscle wasting, aggression, and depression. Virtually every disorder related to a Western diet. Huge. Now, I think I'll just show you these pictures. Livers on the right from rats fed GM soy compared to normal livers. Testicles that changed from pink to blue in rats that were fed GM soy. I will slowly drink water while you absorb this slide. Guys. There's also damage to the uterus and ovaries and young sperm cells. These are Russian-speaking rats. They were fed GM soy starting 2 weeks before they got pregnant. More than half of their babies died within 3 weeks. They were also smaller and couldn't reproduce. Hamsters fed GM soy for 3 generations. Most lost the ability to have babies. Many had hair growing in their mouths. Then there was a 2-year study on rats that were fed Roundup Ready corn, and they died at 2 or 3 times the rate, and they had multiple massive tumors and organ damage. There they are again. This is the stomach on the right of pigs that were fed GM compared to the natural fed on the left. Inflammation. You can see the discoloration on the carcass on the right. Butchers tell us that GM-fed animals stink. It's possibly the changed gut bacteria, and the organs are discolored. All right, so I want to ask you to rate yourself from 1 to 100 how vigilant you'll be next week at avoiding GMOs after looking at that last animal carcass. Okay, how many plan to be low vigilance at eating non-GMO? 1 to 20, raise your hand. 20 to 40, 40 to 60. Anyone? 60 to 80, 80 to 100. Sold. Okay, rate yourself from 1 to 100 how active you want to be about talking about GMOs or prescribing it to patients. Low action, 1 to 20, raise your hand. 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 to 100. 32 minutes. A little bit more. 40-something minutes. Okay. So, we're going to get to the questions in a minute. In fact, we have a panel to answer questions. I wanted to go through this. You notice there was a lot of slides I didn't want. You got the point. Right? You got the point. But I have to give you the good news. I can't just leave you with the part of my lecture that I call Death, Disease, Destruction, and Despair. Goodbye. Have a nice life.
What's left?
Yeah, what's left, right. So, I want to tell you the good news. It's actually great news. What you just saw was extremely significant in terms of your own self-rating. I'm going to tell you how we can get rid of GMOs. And I'm going to predict that you'll believe me because of what just happened. In January of 1999, Monsanto's consultant, Arthur Anderson, they were Enron's consultant also, announced at a conference in San Francisco how they had worked with the executives of the company. They asked him, what's your ideal future in 15 to 20 years? And they described a world in which 100% of all commercial seeds were genetically engineered and patented, and Anderson worked backwards from that goal to create the strategy and tactics to achieve it. They are planning to replace nature, to eliminate the products of the billions of years of evolution. A friend of mine who was in attendance said it was the most arrogant thing he had ever heard in his life. Until the afternoon, when another company predicted that within 5 years, by 2004, 95% of all seeds would be genetically engineered. They did not anticipate the gag order being lifted on Dr. Arpad Pusztai 3 weeks later. He was the one that had fed the rats the potatoes and discovered that the process of genetic engineering caused these problems, not the specific gene. He was the world's greatest scientist in his field. He'd been given $3 million by the UK government to figure out how to test for GMOs. He was a pro-GMO scientist. He did not expect to see those results. And when he did, he went public with his concerns, and he was a hero at his institute for 2 days, and then the phone calls came from the UK Prime Minister's office, and the next day he was fired after 35 years. Silenced with threats of a lawsuit. He never got the chance to implement his protocols. In fact, they spent 7 months attacking him with lies. On February 16, 1999, the gag order was lifted by the order of the UK Parliament. Over 700 articles were written within a month. Within 10 weeks, the tipping point of consumer rejection was achieved. GMOs were kicked out of Europe not by the government, but by Nestle's and Unilever and McDonald's and Burger King. By the same companies that sell us the GMOs, because we didn't have the coverage they had in Europe. We saw a tipping point starting at the top of the food chain, consumers. We're part of a coalition that's been educating people about the dangers of bovine growth hormone. There's so much cancer-promoting hormone in the milk, I'm told by a former Monsanto scientist, 3 of his colleagues examining the milk refused to drink milk thereafter unless it was organic. One bought his own cow. That hormone, IGF-1, is why it was banned in Canada, Europe, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, and now, by educating consumers, it's banned in Walmart's milk, in Starbucks, in Yoplait, in Dannon, in most American dairies, a tipping point. So how many Americans will it take to avoid eating GMOs in order to achieve a tipping point? We don't think it's very much. We think if any amount of market share is lost, that the companies can point to anti-GMO sentiment as the cause. That's the sell signal. We don't think it'll take more than 5% of US shoppers. 5%. That's 15 million Americans. That's only 5.6 million households. That's easy. We have 28 million Americans that buy organic on a regular basis. We have moms. Guys, we have moms. We have moms. We have tiger moms. Give them the information and get out of the way. We have patients who are sick, who are waiting to find this information out that you just heard. We have healthcare professionals who by the thousands are prescribing non-GMO diets. We have religious people who think GMO means God move over. We have way more than we need. Now you may think, how are you going to convince the couch potato, junk food eating American who hasn't yet figured out that food relates to health to get rid of GMOs? We don't have to. He'll never know he's eating a GMO. He'll never know we got rid of it for him. If we're looking for 5%, we can do it without having to convince anyone who is resistant. We can just tell information to people who want to know the answer. So here is the even better news. It's working. We have hit a tipping point in the natural food industry and are on our way for the full tipping point. The natural food industry is tipped. Whole Foods said it's labeling stuff by 2018. And when it was interviewed, when the president was interviewed in March, he said when a product becomes non-GMO project verified, it increases sales by 15 to 30%. Do you think the rest of the industry was listening? Because when they increase, what happens to the competitor? So now there's 1,000 products backlogged into the non-GMO project. The fastest growing category of food in the United States last year was products labeled non-GMO. Above gluten-free, above everything else. Target says next year its home brand will be non-GMO. Ben & Jerry's by next year. Chipotle's is going to be non-GMO as soon as they find the non-GMO oil. We are on a roll. So what's about to happen is the most important window of anti-GMO activism we have ever seen, or I've ever seen in the 17 years I've been doing this. It's the moment a mainstream food brand becomes non-GMO Project verified on the shelves of Walmart and Safeway, not sold in the health food stores. That's when the stopwatch starts. If no change happens, the other side can say, oh, it's just a health foodie thing. But if it starts to increase market share and eroding the market share of the brand leader, no one in the mainstream food arena wants to be second to announce non-GMO if that can happen to their brand. So we don't know the brand. We know that there's been brands that have been enrolled and that are going to be announcing at any time. And so our institute is madly working with moms and sick people and healthcare professionals and religious people and pet owners, because now pet owners are coming to us. So we are working like crazy so that when the stopwatch goes, we have the materials to spread. So make sure you're signed up for our newsletter. Make sure you become a click and send revolutionary to share what we have. Now it's interesting, what is weird, it's kind of Mad Magazine weird. It's kind of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy weird. What's really weird is that the entire problem of GMOs may come down to the sale of Pop-Tarts or something strange. You know, some brand that becomes non-GMO, the sales of that are going to matter like nothing else. I read a trilogy when I was younger called the Wrinkle in Time trilogy. And there was a galaxy, our galaxy, that was in danger between the dark and the light side. And it all came down to one solar system, that's right, ours. And it all came down to one planet, ours. And it came down to one person. And it came down to his finger. And inside his finger there was a little thing that was called a farandulate. It had to deepen. If the farandulate deepened, the galaxy is saved. GMOs. If they're doing this to us, if they're responsible for these disorders to that extent, they may be the worst health catastrophe in the history of human civilization. And that would not be its worst attribute. Its worst attribute is that it sticks around forever. The genes contaminate the gene pool. It self-propagates, it self-replicates. The genes already released will outlast the effects of global warming and nuclear waste. We can reduce the exposure to a tiny amount, but with today's technology, we cannot eliminate it. So we are facing an unbelievable pivotal point. If we do nothing and Monsanto's goal is met of replacing 100% of all commercial seeds, that's not even where it ends. They want to replace the trees. They want to replace the insects. GM insects have been released already on 3 continents. They want to release it next in Key West, mosquitoes. They want to release fruit flies. They want to approve salmon. They want to approve 35 other types of fish. They want to genetically engineer out the mothering instinct of livestock. They want to create a designer world with designer genes designed for greater profit and control, and there's no going back from that. You can't go to a tiny exposure at that point. What you have is a failed nature, a replaced nature. So this is a battle which affects not only everyone who eats, and that's most of you, but all living beings and all future generations. And what is strangely weird is it can come down to the sales of one item in the grocery store. It's that, will that farandulate deepen on a pinky of Charles Wallace in this novel? It is bizarre, but fine. It just makes it so much easier. It makes it so much more leveraged. We don't even have to effect policy change. I'm all for the labeling ballot initiatives. I'm for the labeling bills. They increase awareness. They drive the tipping point. In fact, once we pass in Washington or somewhere else that's active, the FDA may come along and say, okay, we're going to preempt states' rights because we want a uniform national bill. And then what it's going to do is what the FDA does is take dictation from Monsanto. First, it'll delay it for as long as possible. We need a stakeholder discussion. So for 2 years, we'll do a stakeholder discussion. Then they'll put out a terrible one, and then they'll get some comments. But you know what will really happen? You have a negotiating table. You have Monsanto and friends on one side. You have consumers on the other. The swing vote are the food companies. Right now, they're sitting in bed with Monsanto. But if we have a tipping point and they remove GMOs, why would they be against labeling? Especially if some people hold out and don't remove it, then those that have removed it want labeling for a competitive advantage. So even for labeling, the tipping point is primary. And it's so easy. And can we really change people's diet? Can we really get someone to not want to buy the corn chip that has a Bt toxin that might turn their intestinal flora into living pesticide factories? I think we can do this. And you know why I think we can do this? You raised your hand a few minutes ago. The vast majority were at 80 to 100 in 40 minutes. We can do it in 10. I've done it in 3. I can talk very fast. I'm from New York originally. I live in Iowa now. They don't understand it. So we're in a situation where we know exactly what information to give to people. We know exactly how to describe which foods are GMO: soy, corn, cotton, canola, sugar beets, and alfalfa, zucchini, crookneck squash, and Hawaiian and Chinese papaya. We have a shopping guide at non-GMOshoppingguide.com, an iPhone application called Shop No GMO. And we have materials that have taken the same stuff that we talked about tonight. And we have the Seeds of Deception book for the right brain reader that likes to read the stories. We have Genetic Roulette for the left brain reader that wants to know the details. We have the movie Genetic Roulette for anyone, because by the time the credits roll, they've run to their cabinets and are throwing things into the garbage. We have Hidden Dangers for Kids' Meals in the GMO Trilogy for moms. We have been creating materials strategically for behavior change. So it's easy to hate Monsanto, but unless you realize that the food that you eat may be hurting you, your rage may not result in a tipping point. So everything we've been doing at the Institute for Responsible Technology has been designed to create a tipping point. So please sign up for the Spilling the Beans newsletter on the back table. And if you'd like to donate to our work, we are raising money for that. And if you have a testimonial of you or your friends who have gotten rid of GMOs and noticed an improvement, send it to us at healthy@responsibletechnology.org. So I've been speaking for an hour. I was given an hour and 10 minutes. We started a little late. I cannot see that in the back, but it's probably 0, right? It's 0. 10. Okay, 10. All right, I want to give you the 10 minutes to ask questions, but I want to say this. I think we've done a good job tonight of laying out one of the most leveraged moments in human history, and not just human history, history of animals, plants, gut bacteria, everything. With this leverage, it means that a little motion by everyone involved can help protect all living beings and all future generations. This is the opportunity. So I want to ask you to find it, to just hear the voice of nature inside of you, which is saying perhaps something like this. Human arrogance, profit motive, reductionist thinking, in the hands of humans for thousands of years, has resulted in significantly dangerous technologies, but nothing like this. The problems that humans face has resulted in wars and poverty and famine, but nothing like this. As we have developed the ability to manipulate nature, we have discovered the most compactified level of the biological system, holding the information that can be used to create and alter species. And instead of sitting in awe at its brilliance, at its breathtaking complexity, we have smashed it with our arrogance and our profit motive. And in doing so, we have let loose an unstoppable, self-propagating pollution. But it is stoppable. It is ultimately stoppable, but not by the same energy that created it. We have to overcome the epidemic that has been the source of this problem around the world, which is the concept that someone else will take care of it. It's not my responsibility. I'm sure they'll do a good job. That epidemic is in the FDA because they said Monsanto, who told us that PCBs, Agent Orange, and DDT were safe, they can determine if the GMOs are safe. I've been to 37 countries, and invariably someone says, we don't need to test it because the FDA is testing it. I go to states, I've testified before county councils and state governments, and they say, yes, it should be the FDA. Yes, of course it should be the FDA, but they have abdicated. So we have to take up the responsibility. So we can now choose in one fell swoop tonight, in one moment in this instant, to say, I will not pass the buck to someone else. I have been given the information I need to take responsibility for myself, for my food, for my family's food, and for my network. For my network on Facebook, for my network on email, for my network of friends, and for my community. Please join me now in supporting nature, and nature will support us in creating a non-GMO food supply once again. Thank you very much.
We want to thank all the people at the FDA for showing up at this event. Oh, wait a minute. They weren't here. We'll have to take the message to them, I guess. So yeah, the message is, let's label it.